Tonight, hypersonic warfare. Russia's campaign against Ukraine stalled on the ground, turning to missiles launched over 1,000 miles away.
The more his back is against the wall, the greater the severity of the tactics he may employ.
The president set to travel to NATO headquarters in Brussels tomorrow. Plus, the hot seat. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation hearing to ascend to the Supreme Court. And the number of people fleeing Ukraine could reach 6 million. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Russia's desperate war in Ukraine growing more intractable by the day. Welcome to Faith Nation in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening. I'm John Jessup. In the first known use of hypersonic missiles in Russia's bloody war in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin's resorting to extreme measures, utilizing lethal weapons launched over 1,000 miles away, yet traveling at 10 times the speed of sound.
Today, the UN Secretary General claiming Russia will soon be forced to negotiate to an end to the war in Ukraine. And President Biden warning with Putin's back against the wall, he's all the more desperate. That playing out as Russia pounds Ukrainian cities into rubble. CBN's Dale Hurd has the story.
Ukraine appears to have retaken a strategic suburb of Kyiv. Further evidence that the Russian invasion is not going as Moscow had hoped. Even as Russian forces continued to press in near the capital Kyiv and the southern port city of Mariupol, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said today the invasion of Ukraine is unwinnable for Russia.
How many more Ukrainians and Russians will be killed before everyone realizes that this war has no winners, only losers? The only outcome to all this is more suffering, more destruction, and more horror as far as the eye can see.
Ukrainian refugees arriving in Poland today said the city of Mariupol is 99% destroyed. This woman from Kharkiv says the Russians bombed them 40, 50, 60 times a day. Ukrainian President Zelensky again said he is prepared to negotiate directly with Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the war. A pro-Kremlin newspaper reports that almost 10,000 Russian soldiers had been killed in the fighting, with more than 16,000 injured. Russia has also lost at least 5 generals in less than a month. In its frustration over the invasion's slow progress, Russia has begun using hypersonic radar-evading missiles against civilian targets. CBN's George Thomas in Kyiv says the Russian attacks on civilian areas have forced authorities to declare a curfew.
The streets of Kyiv deserted today and rather quiet after authorities imposed a 35-hour curfew, which began last night at 8 p.m. and runs all the way till tomorrow at 7 a.m.
Joe Biden travels to Brussels Thursday to meet with NATO leaders about the war in Ukraine.
He will have the opportunity to coordinate on the next phase of military assistance to Ukraine. He will join our partners in imposing further sanctions on Russia and tightening the existing sanctions to crack down on evasion and to ensure robust enforcement.
Friday, the president will travel to Warsaw to discuss with Polish leaders the humanitarian crisis the war has created. Poland is also host to thousands of U.S. troops. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Dale. Here with us now is James Brooke, visiting fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. James, welcome. Let's start there. Is Russia the first country to use hypersonic weapons in a warfare setting? Additionally, James, what does using these kinds of weapons tell you about Russia's level of desperation?
Well, these weapons are devastating. I personally visited this shopping center last summer with my wife, the one that was totally destroyed with one rocket. 2 days ago. It's called Retroville. It's a very new shopping center. And that rocket apparently was fired from about 1,000 kilometers away. These cruise missiles are very difficult to take down. Now, President Biden is doubling the number of Stingers, which are these man-held anti-aircraft missiles. And they've done a good job shooting down planes and helicopters. The anti-cruise missiles, that's a tough one. Frankly, I think Russia is limited in the number they have. Putin is desperate. It's very clear. In less than 1 month, 3 times the number of tanks have been destroyed in Ukraine as were destroyed during a decade in Afghanistan. So 3 times the Russian tanks have been blown up compared to a decade in Afghanistan. Virtually the same number of armored personnel carriers have been destroyed, about 1,500 in Ukraine. These shoulder-held javelins are very efficient, and President Biden is tripling the number of javelins that he's sending to Ukraine. So that'll be very useful. So the Russian offensive is stalled. It's being reversed in some areas, and they're resorting to what Putin did to win in Chechnya and Syria, which is carpet bombing, massive bombing.
President Biden has said that Putin's back is up against the wall. What's your fear? What lengths do you think Putin will go to in his desperation?
Putin apparently once said, "Don't corner a rat," and I'm afraid we're in that situation now. President Biden warned that he could use chemical, and I think that is a possibility. No one in Ukraine, I lived there for 6 years, no one's prepared for chemical. No one has the faintest idea how to counteract that. And then there is the nuclear option, which would be Putin's death sentence, but it would be terrible for the rest of the world, by no question about it. So
it is a frightening prospect. Real quickly, in the few seconds we have left, just want to know, we've seen remarkable grit on the part of the Ukrainians in the fight, with continued support, of course, from the United States and the West. How long can that last in about 30 seconds or so that we have left?
It can last quite a while. The Ukrainians are universally opposed to being run by Russia. They don't want it. And I'd like to highlight a Republican Senator, Ben Sasse, who said, if they can shoot it, we can ship it. And that's the attitude in the U.S. Congress today.
All right, James Brooke with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Great to get your expertise and insights this evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Well, President Biden's Supreme Court nominee found herself in the hot seat today, facing hours of nonstop questions.
Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is the first black woman to face confirmation for the high court. Senate Republicans raising concerns on issues ranging from her record on crime and terror as a public defender to religious freedom and her judicial philosophy. CBN News senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener joins us with this story. Tara?
John and Jenna, this was certainly a more contentious day on Capitol Hill. With introductions now out of the way, Republicans took their time focusing on how Jackson's record might influence her decisions on the high court.
Raise your right hand.
Several hours of vetting on day 2 with Jackson's judicial philosophy in the spotlight.
I hope that you will see how much I love our country and the Constitution, and the rights that make us free.
As each senator gets 30 minutes, Republicans are drilling down. It began with the ranking member questioning her interpretation of the Constitution.
Do the First Amendment free speech protections apply equally to conservative and liberal protesters?
Yes, Senator.
Republicans are also honing in on court packing, Jackson's role representing detainees at Guantanamo Bay.
Why in the world would you call Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld and George W. Bush war criminals in a legal filing?
And criticism that is both defender and judge that she's been soft on crime and child predators.
As a mother and a judge who has had to deal with these cases, I was thinking that nothing could be further from the truth.
This is the 51-year-old's 4th confirmation appearance before the committee, where she previously gained GOP support for roles such as sitting on the D.C. Appeals Court. Though the president prefers a bipartisan confirmation vote, Democrats say they don't need it. During the proceedings, Jackson, who stated her belief in God during opening statements, faced questions on her faith.
Do you attend church regularly?
Well, Senator, I am reluctant to talk about my faith in this way.
Senator Lindsey Graham assuring Jackson her faith will be treated respectfully, unlike Justice Amy Coney Barrett's.
Just imagine what would happen if people on late night television called you an effing nut, speaking in tongues because you practiced the Catholic faith.
While Republicans raised concern about Jackson's record on abortion, she was clear about her stance on the subject.
Roe and Casey are the settled law of the Supreme Court concerning the right to terminate a woman's pregnancy.
And Jackson faces about 8 more hours of questioning tomorrow. Democrats are confident she will be confirmed by Easter. John and Jenna.
All right, CBN senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener, thank you. And here with us now, Nathan Gonzales, editor and publisher of Inside Elections. Nathan, welcome. So Judge Jackson today repeatedly said she does not see the role of a Supreme Court justice as a policymaker, pledging independence and neutrality. What stood out to you in today's back and forth?
Well, I think this is all a little bit of political theater for the end result that's probably going to be a partisan line vote. Maybe Senators Collins and Murkowski, the Republican senators, join with the remainder of Democrats. But this is just another example, another confirmation of a shift that we've seen from previous generations. Previously, even the most liberal or conservative judges who were appointed to the Supreme Court received widely bipartisan support because the Senate took this advise and consent to mean that unless there was an egregious example of disqualification, that a president gets to choose their Supreme Court nominees when those vacancies come up. Now it is a partisan issue, and you have the undercurrent of Republicans trying to maybe exact a little bit of revenge on Judge Jackson in this case for how Democrats treated President Trump's nominees not too long ago.
And speaking of that, Nathan, Republicans at the outset pledged Judge Jackson's confirmation hearings would not be the kind of circus that we saw with Judge Amy Coney Barrett and Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Real quickly, though, according to observers, so far so good with these hearings. The question I have for you is two-part. Can President Biden get a bump out of this nomination if she is successfully placed on the court? And then secondly, will it make much of a difference heading into the midterm elections several months away from now?
Well, President Biden might be able to get a slight bump. Remember, when we're looking at his job approval rating, he's only been getting about 75% approval among Democrats. So getting a justice confirmed, delivering on a campaign promise could help bring some Democrats back into, regain some confidence from some Democrats in the job that he is doing. But that, in the broad scheme of things, that is just maybe a couple of points that he can gain. Democrats will take anything that they can get, but I don't see this as a game-changing moment for a midterm elections that are still set up for Republicans to do very well.
Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri zeroing in on Judge Jackson's sentencing decisions for child pornography offenders. Republicans have tried to paint her as soft on crime. Nathan, any thoughts on that line of attack and how effective it's been?
Well, I mean, Republicans have every right to look at her record and try to find things that are problematic and to bring those to light. That is part of the process. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to change. It's going to be enough to change Democratic senators' minds who are inclined to confirm her, and whereas a lot of Republicans are going to agree with the senator in the concerns that he's bringing up, because this is now not just advise and consent. It is about whether these Republican senators, would agree with the ideology of Judge Brown Jackson, and clearly they do not have the same worldview.
All right, Nathan, we have to leave it there. Always good to have you. Nathan Gonzales with Inside Elections. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
The United Nations estimates some 6 million Ukrainians could flee Russia's war on their homeland. Coming up, the work to help people escaping the war-torn country.
Welcome back. To Eastern Europe, the United Nations predicting more than 6 million refugees could flee Ukraine for neighboring nations.
CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground to meet the desperate needs of fleeing families and offer them physical and spiritual comfort.
Many families are fleeing from Ukraine into Poland. Operation Blessing stands ready near the border to help bring aid and relief to those fleeing the war. These are some of their stories.
My Меня зовут Надежда, это мои дети. Илья, ему 9 лет, и Марьяна, ей 5,5 лет. Мы из Украины, с Западной Украины, город Луцк. Жили там, у нас все было, мы дом строили. Ну, взяли с собой какие-то деньги, взяли вещи, взяли, потому что его не выпускают за границы. Мужчин от 18 до 60 лет не выпускают. Он провел нас, и мы с церкви, с группой людей приехали сюда.
My name is Hasmik, or Jasmine, from Kiev, Kiev district. And I never can imagine that in Ukraine can be war. And now, because of this Putin, we have this war, and we can't understand why.
Еще там 1,5 недели назад никто не думал, что вообще война будет. Мы до последнего не верили, что она будет. Но вот есть то, что есть. Надежда на Господа и на то, что Он убережет.
The bombings have affected these families in heartbreaking ways.
We have in front of our home apartment very big place, and they bombed this building. It's near of my home, and I thought this moment that we died. Really, it was very.
It must have been so hard.
Yes.
Operation Blessing teams are on the ground in Poland, distributing critical supplies to these precious families.
Thank you very much for that we can visit to Poland and you help people.
Спасибо вам большое. Спасибо за помощь, за молитвы, за то, что принимаете. Это очень ценно и важно в такое время.
War is awful. I can say no war, only love. So thank you that you helped Ukrainian people, and not only Ukrainian, all citizens that nationalities that lives there. Thank you.
Homelessness at a critical level in American cities. When we come back, one Christian ministry is helping change the approach.
Well, welcome back. It's no secret America's cities are in crisis with soaring crime rates and a growing number of people experiencing homelessness.
Well, society often puts labels on them like criminal, addict, mentally ill. One Christian ministry is working to flip that script. Here's CBN's Lori Johnson.
Increasing crime in New York City and a tragic murder in the subway, Mayor Eric Adams has ordered city workers will relocate homeless people living in the subways to shelters.
We pretended as though we didn't see it, and we allowed them to live in inhumane environments.
In California, Governor Gavin Newsom wants mental health courts in each county. The plan is intended to offer treatment to homeless people with mental illness and addiction.
I mean, we could hold hands, have a candlelight vigil, talk about the way the world should be, or we could take some damn responsibility to implement our ideals, and that's what we're doing differently here.
The measure will need approval by the California legislature. While the government plays a major role in addressing homelessness, Christian ministries are also helping people who live on the street.
A Christian response to homelessness, I'll say 1, stop for the one. I say 2, learn the story. 3, never, ever underestimate the power of prayer.
6 years ago, Pastor David McBride and Nick Knoll began helping people living on the streets near their Norfolk, Virginia church by getting them to nearby shelters, employment training, addiction recovery, and mental health services.
There's tons of resources out there. Sometimes not enough, but sometimes, there's more than what some people know.
Church volunteers focus on one-on-one relationships, similar to a mentoring program. It's called the Dream Center of Hampton Roads.
And we're trying to get them to discover restoration of who God really created them to be. What's your dream career? What is the dream purpose that God has put in you? How can we restore that dream? How can we recover that dream so that when you walk down the street, no one looks at your forehead and says homeless. They look at you and say son and daughter of God.
Instead of just sending people to other services, sometimes these volunteers train and provide the help, all while fighting the stigma of homeless people being criminals, addicts, or mentally ill.
Less than half of the folks that we deal with have those situations. Now, the ones that do, they're bigger barriers. That's just one extra thing that has to be overcome, you know, in their dream restoration process.
Many find themselves living on the street through no fault of their own.
Somebody coming in town for a job that didn't work out, or they started and then got laid off. Recently, we've had a real ramp up in domestic violence situations.
A soup kitchen opened the door for Zach Sarro to get involved.
I came one day to eat when I was homeless on the streets, and they offered me a meal and saw that I was young and sat down with me and tried to get to know me, and I opened up to them slowly, and they've been helping me ever since.
He got a job, an apartment, and gave his life to Jesus.
I wouldn't be the man that I am today without the help that the Dream Center provided.
So while government-sponsored shelters and services definitely help the homeless, the Dream Center of Hampton Roads shows the difference the church and Christians with a personal interest can make in the lives of those living on the streets. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Still ahead, giving the gift of gas and spreading the gospel. You're watching CBN's Faith Nation.
Finally tonight, amid rising gas prices, a bit of relief for some North Carolina drivers. A church in Charlotte gave away $10,000 of gas this weekend, and that's not all drivers received.
That's right. Kingdom City Church gifted more than 300 people with free gas, grocery vouchers, and prayer, dubbing the event Gas on God.
So thankful for people like everyone here doing this for the community. And I know together anything is possible.
Well, as you can imagine, the gas and the lines flowed pretty steady throughout the day. One woman stopped by saying she simply needed prayer. The event was a big hit in the community, filling cars with gas in the community with a little hope and cheer. That's called doing some good work in the community.
Yeah, it's great to see. Maybe they're starting a little trend here. We'll see.
Well, thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great night.